Who you see right there at the White House. We do have breaking news on the debt limit. Kayla, what do we know?
Well, Scott, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen just wrote a letter to leaders in Congress saying that beginning next Thursday, January 19th, the United States will be reaching its statutory debt limit of just more than $31 trillion, at which point it will have to start taking what it calls extraordinary measures to conserve capital at the federal governmental level to avoid a default on debt. To do that, Treasury is going to be withholding some investments from retirement funds for postal service workers as well as other federal government employees. And Secretary Yellen says that as soon as any such deal on the debt ceiling is reached, that those investment accounts will be made whole. A senior administration official tells me that the White House believes that negotiations on a potential debt ceiling deal would begin in earnest after the tax season deadline in mid-April, at which point Treasury will know exactly what tax receipts have come in, what revenue looks like, and exactly how much time will be left on the clock, at which point they'll be able to begin negotiations with Republicans in Congress about exactly how a deal could come together. Secretary Yellen says that the U.S. will be able to maintain these extraordinary measures until about early June. We'll see how that goalpost moves in the coming months.
Ladies and gentlemen, today is Friday, January 13th, 2023. I'm here with Economic Prepper and also Ron from another channel. You may have seen him before, but either way, we have some important information to share with you today, particularly about credit card limits, credit line limits, and more importantly, the U.S. debt ceiling and ultimately the U.S.'s debt limit. Now, folks, the U.S. debt limit is a ceiling imposed by Congress on the amount of debt that the U.S. federal government can have outstanding. This limit has been set at $28.4 trillion since August 1st of 2021. Additionally, the debt limit is the total amount of money that the United States government is authorized to borrow to meet its existing legal obligations.
Wait.
Including what?
This debt limit allows them to meet their existing financial obligations. Does this mean that they can potentially put themselves on the hook for financial obligations, but those obligations could potentially have exceeded the debt limit? And
Hey, what's up? Hey, how you doing?
And if the debt limit doesn't get approved after the spending has already been committed to, is that how we end up potentially putting ourselves in default?
The problem here is that this doesn't address the issue of repayment. This is merely the issue of how deep in a hole are we going to get. And this debt limit is the total amount of money that the United States government is authorized to borrow to meet its existing legal obligations, including, pay attention folks, Social Security and Medicare benefits, military salaries, interest on the national debt, tax refunds, and other payments. This is going to affect everybody.
Oh my God.
Everybody. Now, we are headed to breakfast, so we're not going to be on this video very long, but we could come back later if you guys comment down below and you want more information on the topic. However, most importantly, Social Security and Medicare. Folks, if you haven't seen my video I put up this morning, go check it out, because there's an urgent warning for folks that could possibly face disruptions, as we are seeing multiple impacts negatively affecting the ability for people to receive money, receive checks, receive payments, and ultimately go to work and earn an income.
Is that affecting those who are getting Social Security? And
it definitely could.
Through direct deposit as well?
No, not through direct deposit,
okay.
But there is some important information tied to that
that
I want people to be aware of, especially if perhaps you're unaffected, but maybe a part of your income is someone in your household, an income you rely on. It goes much deeper than the surface would make you believe, and these things need to be taken into consideration, as well as planning and preparation and steps to avoid getting wiped out. Now, let's talk about military salaries, because apparently it has been brought to my attention that there's a new rule or a change of the ruling in such a way that now you no longer have to have any health-related protocols and prerequisites to be in the military, which wasn't always the case, if you guys recall. And you covered this on a recent video.
Oh, yes, I did.
Now, the big question is, the folks that were out there that saw their income disrupted through the government, through the country that they risked their lives for, will they be made whole? It's a good question. Good question. But even more importantly, like I said, we don't have much time because we're about to go sit down and eat breakfast, but I wanted to bring you guys this update as quickly as I could, because this is important information. Not as important as this G63 AMG wagon. That joker is clean. But also possibly affected by this debt limit, debt ceiling issue, which could place us in default. Janet Yellen has made announcements. Folks, serious implications here. But more importantly, what's going to affect everybody, or almost everybody, there's a few somebodies that's going to be excluded from this: tax returns. The debt limit ceiling affects tax returns. So folks, the key here is planning, preparation. Hopefully you're not in a financial bind where you're hoping and praying and waiting on this check to show up. And if you are, and you want to find ways to mitigate that risk, find ways to increase your income, and start building out a much more suitable emergency savings safety net, please comment down below. But the tax return issue, the debt ceiling issue, the salaries for military employees, workers, soldiers, Social Security, Medicare, it all boils down to the US debt ceiling, debt limit, which is ultimately an overextension of your credit worthiness and creditability. And we as regular people do not hold the same power to manipulate our credit lines like the US government, having had done it numerous times already in the past. We don't have that ability. So if you particularly in your household are possibly facing a similar situation where you are actually reaching your debt ceiling and your debt limit, well, guess what? Your only recourse...
Please, Mr. American Express, please increase my credit line.
American Express sending out notifications. I put one up on the video I shared with you guys this morning about the notification I received when I logged into my American Express account. You might want to go check it out. But if you're have hit your debt ceiling and your debt limit, you'll share similar consequences as the entire country as if the US debt ceiling is not raised. This is not a matter of a question of whether or not they're going to reduce the amount of debt owed, make payments, pay down this principal balance. They're not planning or anticipating on paying it off. They just want to raise the credit limit. Otherwise, many will suffer. Likewise, personally, if you yourself, your family, friends, whomever, are in a similar situation and you're reaching your debt limit and your debt ceiling, well, guess what? Your only option is going to be to pay it off, because you're not going to be able to raise it. And odds are you're not going to have any lenders or creditors out there willing to extend you additional credit to push this, kick this can further down the road.
No bailouts for you, sir.
And you take that and you couple it on top of what's going on with Congress and the US debt ceiling and the US debt limit, and you add into that losing your Social Security, losing your Medicare, losing your military income military salary and possibly not getting your tax return, shit.